Hey, Coffee Compiler Club here today to talk about compilers or maybe just coding in general and anything to do with implementations of programming languages. Everyone's recorded, you go show up on YouTube. Boy, we're a short start again, and that's all fine. So we're just gonna take on and run here. So this morning's favorite rant is the old one that I've done before, and that is I off at Hashgraph doing interpreter for smart contracts. And so language and language implementation. And 6 weeks, a month and a half, at 50% speed up in executing smart contracts. And the primary win is removing the performance anti-pattern that is the modern version of Java best practices. The best practices, I don't know who they're best for, but they're not best for me. They're not best for anyone I know. They're not best for any project I know. And yet they're touted as best, but I think it's just bullshit. So I predate all these coding patterns. I've lived with them, without them, before them. And in my long, long years of coding, I'll say, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, I've never seen a coding style ever make a project succeed, but I've seen coding style wars break teams apart. Um, in this case, there's a huge amount of performance left on the table because somebody was hardcore about following best practices. And the fix for that was to basically remove it. There was more to it than that, but not hugely more. So hyper thin wrapper layers, interfaces with one function on them that were just because I wanted to add or subtract a function somewhere. Um, People doing builder patterns when it would just do a normal constructor. People doing getters and setters on private variables, but the getters and setters are just public. So why did you need a getter and a setter if you're just going to have ways to edit the variable anyhow completely? Like, just makes no sense. So the thousands and thousands of layers and allocations that go with the layers contribute to like a huge amount of performance problems, and they hide the real issues going on. So this is the getter setter rant. If I see a field, I know the cost. And if I see a function call, I have to go look it up, see what the cost is. And it's a getter and a setter, the cost is mostly the same as the cost of a field loader set. But occasionally the JIT won't be able to inline because it hits the inlining depth limits or whatever, but it usually inlines and disappears and the cost is the same. But that's the cost to execute. The cost to engineer is I have to remember, is this a cheat function or do I be careful about how I use it? And replicate that not by, onesies and tensies, but by thousands and thousands of getters and setters. And suddenly I have a real problem staring at any piece of code and trying to figure out, is this function call expensive or cheap? Did this guy engineer this function to be in this place because it was expensive and he wanted to hide it off the main path? Or did it just happen to drop in because it was the quickest way to get something done? And, replicate that 1,000 times over, and suddenly you're drugged down and doing whatever you want to call it, staring at miles and miles of junk code to figure out that, oh no, it just copied a value from here to here to here, and then copied it back here to here to here. And if I get rid of all of those, I just move the value from there to there. And it's both much more obvious what's going on, and it's a hell of a lot faster too. And that's where I got 50% speed up was basically throwing all those wrapper layers out, all the builder patterns where you make an object in order to make an object, just make the object directly, that kind of thing. Fine, rant done. Um, what else? I've had this. Where's my Ryan here? I was gonna talk about non-blocking hash map and why the cost doesn't cost on allocating. I mean, when locking and unlocking, it doesn't cost an allocation, but he's not. We just went through a bunch of other locking things in Coffee Club this morning. Does anyone care? The one pattern that Haley came up with is kind of a cute one. I hadn't seen that before. He's got an arena, a multi-threaded arena. He wants to allocate, deallocate chunks out of the arena and multi-threadedly, and they're variable size, so you can't use like a linked list or a bit set where each bit is owned or not, and just do a cas on a bit set. Well, there's the chats going. What do you guys? You guys come trying to come with topics here, right? If no one's got a topic, we can just be done. Is my mic working? Matt, no, your mic. It says you're
Well,
not muted, but I don't hear anything.
Can you hear anything now?
I do now. Yes.
How is my audio?
You're a little tin canny, but you usually are.
Okay, fair enough. An open question, when you mentioned those getters and setters, I actually wonder about how about making it illegal in a programming language? So if you can detect that the getter and setter is public and it's only wrapping a scalar field, maybe just make it illegal by construction, by erroring out.
Oh, just say you can't write them ever?
Yes, basically if it's wrapping something that is not supposed to be expensive, maybe like a scalar, just make it illegal in the programming language or as a lint rule in a compiler. I wonder if
So
that doesn't go too far in the other direction, but I did see this as an empty pattern, so maybe that's one way to prevent it.
there is a place for them. So here's my easy example. So you have a hash map implementation, and you want the size. On some implementations, that size is a variable. So you want just a getter. That's the size call, and it's going to get some count of the number of elements in the table. You go to concurrent hash map, and the size is not well defined because clock cycle by clock cycle it changes. Okay. One of the unspoken agreements on the size call on a map table is it's cheap. So a cheap version that is precise on concurrent just can't be had. The best you can do on concurrent is sweep the table, and that's not cheap. And also, it's still not precise. But
It's
you can
only
do an approximate where you sweep only rarely and update your size periodically. And then you have a cheap call that give you the size approximate, which you only can get approximate size anyhow. And asymptotically it's cheap, but occasionally maybe it's not, or you update the size behind the back in another thread anyhow. But you
right,
can the size call is in one implementation clearly just a getter. And in another implementation, it's something fancy schmancy, does whatever the hell it
but
does.
that's fine. But I think I'm not going as far. I would just suggest when you expose both getter and setter,
Uh,
then make it an error, because then you're really not encapsulating almost anything at
yeah.
all.
Yes.
That seems like an anti-pattern to me. And of
And
course, one could argue that, oh, but someday this scalar load can become a database read, but then maybe that is not something you should be abstracting over because that's a fairly invasive architectural change. And do you really want this to be, is it really encapsulated? I don't think so.
right.
Right?
And every IDE on the planet will encapsulate that for you at some stupid button refactoring click.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
seems that seems to be something that is more commonly wrong
Yep.
than correct. Maybe you can allow some special opt-out, like Rust allows for unsafe code blocks when you want to opt out of its rule. Maybe you can have some special opt-out that okay, I really need a getter and setter here, but that should be something that you have to explicitly opt in.
Yep.
That should not be easy to do in a programming
Yeah.
language.
And the code base I'm looking at is just chock full of them. Every single thing on the planet was this way. And it's just like no need, no help, no use. It's a clear anti-pattern. Fine. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I wonder, but you can't, well, I can't do it to the current code base. We're inheriting a large code base from the Ethereum project, and then we're doing extensions on how to do the coherent traffic and the execution model and stuff. So we're trying to not update the uphill stuff, but the uphill stuff is just full of this shit.
And to be
So we're
fair,
stepping
if I
around it.
correctly, Ethereum was introduced by a 19-year-old
That's what I
who
heard. Some very young kid
invented.
defined well, certainly the execution engine, the original bytecode interpreter, I heard was done by some very young kid, like a 19-year-old.
So
Um,
when I,
and the
well, I
language
wasn't
spec,
there, but if I consider the code I written when I was 19-year-old, I probably wouldn't be proud of it either.
yes. I'd be interesting if I could find some of my code from when I was 19 lying around. By the time I was like 22, 23, I had a fourth implementation with a tree structure dictionary, and it was in production use by some cities, municipal utilities system set up somewhere. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I sold a bunch of copies of it and whatever. And that was already dramatically changed from what I was doing in high school. So, yeah, 15, that's scary. 19, still scary. Yeah.
Yeah, you never
Um,
know whether to be proud or scared when you find out code you wrote a long time ago is still in production somewhere.
yes. As far as I know, well, as of a decade ago, it had been still in production use for 30 years. So I'm sure it's at that point where no one's going to touch it. It's just working until they replace the whole whatever it's involved in. But that was kind of interesting. I actually talked to the guy who installed it. He was still working there, had it still running. So I talked to a guy who had been using my shit for 30 years, more than 10 years ago. So yeah, kind of proud, kind of scary. Yeah.
Yeah. I had one moment like that at Twitter where I was looking up something and I was like, man, the design of this cookie is insane. Who decided this was how we were going to format our cookie? And I went and looked it up and it was Jack Dorsey in like
Oh, really?
the
Okay.
first week that the company existed. You're just like, how has this piece of format stuck around for 15 years?
It did something. Did it right. There you go. See that? Well, so part of the rant from this morning, you missed the part where I talked. We had engineering staff meeting for Hashgraph, and part of the discussion was, what the hell is coding style anti-patterns running around? And part of that discussion was just, damn it, I lost my head. I was in the middle of a rant of how do you train people? How do you get them past this? I have to do it the rules based where the God knows where the rules came from. So we're having this is not where I was headed earlier, but I'm trying to pull something out here that was another cool idea, which was how do you do code reviews where you get somebody does the nitpicky thing that doesn't just complain on everything that's bad, and how do you help the junior engineers get to the next layer where the nitpicky thing becomes obviously it's a nitpick, you should ignore it as opposed to just like David was just saying here. I got getters and setters that are public and a variable that's private. Like what the hell's the point? There was absolutely no encapsulation because getters and setters are public. So that should be, as Matt saying does, it should be an anti-pattern. It should be like you were saying it should be a compiler error, and I'm kind of thinking maybe you're right. Maybe it should be a compiler error. No encapsulation whatsoever. Why the fuck are you bothering? Now, teach that to a junior guy who got taught the opposite in college.
So I can tell you what the CS 101 answer to that is.
Uh-oh.
It's
Fire.
that it is much more expensive to change API than it is to change behavior. Because there are callers, and there are often callers that exist in code bases you don't own. Those are in your customers' code bases.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, here is unint, and you expose that int, and suddenly you want to change it to a function that does some dynamic lookup behavior and then returns an int,
Yeah.
that's very hard to do because the thing that you gave them was a constant, not a function.
It was an int.
So
So
if
it
you
wasn't
go ahead
necessarily
and
a
you make
constant.
everything a function can absolutely just return a value, but a value can't transparently just become a function.
Yeah. And the counter argument to that is for every piece of performance work I do, I have to remove these layers. And for every piece of large scale coding I do, I want to know what the API is, except that if the API is just a variable, when I see the function, I still don't know what it is. I don't know if it's expensive or cheap. I don't know if the guy put it there because he was trying to tuck it out of the fast path because it was expensive, or the guy just slapped it down because it was casually in his way and he moved on. And so I have to look at every single function. And then suddenly I'm drowning in functions. Whereas if it was just a fucking variable, I would know immediately at least what the cost was.
To, to,
So
to my memory, Scala is interesting here because we can say it's a function, but if you provide a variable, it would consider override of that.
what I'm saying is at a
So
glance
that was the
in
decision
code,
that Ruby made. Ruby
Mm.
looked at Java and said, oh my God, there are getters and setters everywhere.
yeah,
And the actual number of times that you need to replace a constant with a function is pretty rare.
right, yeah,
Maybe we should just have a mechanism that says this is a pseudo field. And when you try to access the field, instead of accessing the field, I'm going to call this function. And now all of the getters and setters everywhere go away because if you actually have the case where you need it to be a function, then you just lie.
Yeah,
and say you
just
think it's a variable, but it's actually a function under the hood.
right. And that in my head is not solving the problem that I at least have, which is I look at a name, and if it's a field, I know what it does. It's complete semantics and it's cost. And if it's magically a function, if it's an actual function, at least I get a warning. Hey, you don't know. Now it's a magical function, and now I can't tell that I don't know. And so it's not just every pair of parens, I have to go look up the function, and now it's every name in the planet, I have to go look it up. And so I disagree with that strategy. And here is Cameron, who's totally promoting that strategy.
Yeah, but within context.
Yeah, no context. I just
No,
dumped
no.
it on you on the fly.
I think it's reasonable to have the opinion you do for some languages, and I think it's unreasonable in other contexts. So
Your your AI picture thing is doing weird things to your face. Yeah.
Did you get a haircut recently?
And you got a haircut too, a big one. And isn't it winter? Don't you want hair on your head?
I hate hair. I go bald, but I don't think my wife would like it.
I see. I see. Well, I did the Boy Scout clean shaven look for half my life. And after I got divorced, I said, fuck it, I'm growing a beard. And that worked out really well too. Well, who I ended up with. So, the beard's here.
Yeah.
And I have hair, so damn it, I'm gonna let it stay. Although it's getting shaggy enough. I anyway get it trimmed, but
Yeah.
no,
I think
we were ranting at Hashgraph about 19-year-olds designing Ethereum contract specs and the performance of enterprise Java on an interpreter. I just spent a couple weeks cleaning out enterprise Java layers and layers and layers and got a 50% speed up. Really by just removing junk layers and layers and layers.
50% or 50x?
50%. However many transactions per second, cut in half and add.
50%.
So TPS of whatever, 1.1K, and now it's 1.7K. And
That
that was
still
just,
seems like significantly less than what is possible, given what I know
totally.
is the constraints.
Oh, there's enormous amounts of performance to be had. There is a thing with the Byzantine, async Byzantine coherency layer there that you have to get heard back from like 2/3 of the people involved. So there is a network timing overhead that you're waiting for any one
is this a
transaction to
raft
complete.
raft thing or something? Paxos?
Yeah, it's not.
No, it's worse
right.
than Paxos. Paxos has two phases. The Byzantine versions
Yeah.
always go from I need 50% plus one to I need 2/3 plus one.
Yeah.
And they go from I need 2 round trips to 3 round trips.
Yeah.
So
it's
it will
asynchronous.
always be more expensive to be Byzantine than it
Yeah.
will to use Raft or Paxos.
Yeah. The plus of Byzantine is there's literally no single point of failure. You can't just shoot one person. You have to get a substantial fraction of your audience to agree to cooperatively lie to break for the other set of people.
Yep.
So if you
Whereas
consume some
Paxos,
level of
a
honesty,
single liar can make Paxos go split brain.
yes, and a single liar in Paxos, right, can fuck you up. Yes, not so with the Byzantine one. Fine. Um, yeah. So the Hashgraph, the company, is doing an implementation of Ethereum. They've inherited the original implementation, and the original implementation has just these horrendous performance anti-patterns. And that's what I've been having fun. I hit a point this morning where I passed large major testing milestones and performance milestones. So I'm confident that the number is 50% for basically removing shit layers.
So there's two separate games going on there. There's one game which is we've got a bunch of people that are trying to throw events into the system and we want to put all the events in a total order.
Yeah.
And the second one is we have a total ordering of events and we would like to just run all the transactions from the first one to the last one as fast as possible.
And verify.
My understanding was that most of your time was on the second one of assume that you have a totally ordered set of transactions, run them fast.
I don't know where the latency lies right now. My understanding was the sum total of events here is, hang on, let me grab Ryan. The sum total of events here is there's a latency for a transaction and there's a throughput. And the throughput under sort of continuous heavy load is limited by, in my head, it's limited by the enterprise anti-patterns running around. So they can't GC fast enough. They have the classic, I'm out of memory bandwidth because I'm over allocating. And the interpreter was in the core of that. And it allocates brutally also. So I cut out a ton of allocation and a ton of complexity in the interpreter, so got faster there. I think I won't be long for the next throughput performance improvements will be cutting out allocations all over the place from this enterprise style nonsense they're going through. Um, Latency, though, you're correct. It's round trip to 20, 30 people, however many handshake rounds. It turns out you can overlap the handshake rounds, but that doesn't cut down the latency. So throughput can be one or one per, one out and one back or something like that. But the latency is I had to hear back. I had to spew it out. I had to hear back from a two-thirds majority. And maybe I had to do that a couple rounds. So there is some time on the when it settles. But the individual nodes, they're big, fat, beefy nodes, but they're drowning in allocation. So that's what's going to happen. So I will probably go and do a JIT at some point. But I think after a couple rounds on the interpreter, the next performance boost will be restructuring how the core transaction logic works to get rid of the vast majority of allocations.
Yeah, the one that I remember being crazy for allocations was there was some JSON parser we were using. And they did an
Yeah.
optimization that only applied to strings that were 7 bytes or less.
German.
German
Because the
strings.
first
Yeah.
was a sentinel or whatever,
Yeah.
and then you just stuff it in the pointer. And the amount of speed up that this JSON parser got, and you're just like, oh my God, the number of strings that are in JSON files that are
Yeah.
2 characters, 3 characters.
Right. Yeah. I have done this operation before of interning all strings in applications and had large factor
Right.
speed ups or
So
drops in
Ethereum
SLA.
has a lot of strings that start 0x and then have
Yeah.
exactly 16 hexadecimal digits in them
Yeah.
because it's an int64.
Yeah. As a hex string. Yeah. So the
So
Ethereum project
when you
has,
hard code something and say, okay, we are going to treat a string with a hexadecimal 64-bit number in it as a different case than a string that has a 64-bit hexadecimal number in it.
right.
And just say, okay, we're going to have this one spot where we stick all of these strings that are this length, and we're going to decode them, and we're not going to allocate when we're doing these 64-bit integers because we just have one thread local thing. That is the buffer that we put that particular string in. I was amazed by the number of allocations that went away.
That went away. Yeah. And that turned straight into performance. Yeah. What's the
Because you just
cost
happen
allocation?
to know things. Like in a generic case, you shouldn't get any real speed up by special casing strings that happen to start with a 0x
Yeah.
and then have exactly 16 digits of hex.
And that just goes to show that the world's not uniformly random.
Right.
There
I am
are,
curious to see how many tricks you find like that in Ethereum. That
yeah,
there are things that are really dumb about Ethereum, but if they're super consistent in the
yeah,
ways they did that
yeah,
thing.
yeah. There's a bunch of those. So there's the address, which is like a value you
256-bit.
send over the wire to talk about a particular account. And an account would be what you have locally as a Java structure you're going to hack with. Accounts are generally hex strings. I think they have a leading 0x. I'm not sure. I have to go look. They have something stupid. Maybe they don't have a leading 0x, but they're exactly 20
I believe it
bytes.
is 0x and then 64 hexets.
Right. This one would be 20 bytes where of hex characters. So that's 20, I'm sorry,
40.
20, get this straight here. 20 bytes worth, so 40 characters, not the 0x, but you would turn it into an int64 and an int32 or whatever. It'd come down to 20 bytes worth of data. And then you want to compare them and hash them and look them up in tables. And right now, of course, that's just string equality. And many of them are actually all leading zeros. They are the special ones that have internal special meaning. They all have the top 16 bytes worth of things are all zeros. So there's some fancy schmancy version of it. This says I have a structure, it's got an int and a long, and I know that the long is typically 0, and I want to do, EQ checks and hashes and shit where I don't want to touch giant strings. And there's millions and millions. So that will be a thing that I'm thinking that I'm going to be doing. That's coming around. They pass around in this code base, they pass around hex encoded strings as a substitute for plain generic primitive ints
Bytes.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's super common. And I'm just like, oh my God, can you make this any more expensive? What the hell are you doing here?
Well, I can tell you what they're doing here. They're trying to get away from the fact that you can't put a 64-bit int into a JSON structure.
Oh, I'm talking about the
Oh,
Java
yeah.
version for Ethereum. But right, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And still like, guys.
So does
Right.
JSON
They
now
have let
actually
the fact
specify
that
it's
their wire
32?
protocol is JSON
JSON uses
bleed
floats.
in as a technical detail to the entire implementation of everything.
Yeah, JSON uses doubles, I think. Like everything's every number is like is either a
Float
32-bit
64.
float or it's 64. Yeah, it's 64-bit.
No,
Every
right.
single one.
The generic implementation is a 64-bit float, except that you have things that you're known ints, which get you 53-bit integers in a double. And then there are people who want to have 64-bit integers because they're doing view UIDs, for instance. There's other reasons to have these patterns, and they don't play nice as a double because the double hardware wants to immediately turn it to a generic NAN. And so you have to say it's not actually a double here. And then
It's a
because the
string.
language has these rough edges, you turn into, oh, it's a string.
Yeah.
That's
JSON's not great. There's also some better ones like you can use what's it called? Protobufs or NBT and is another one. And then
a lot of those. That's for passing it between machines. But the leakage is that it gets inside your standard execution internally. It's not being passed through the wire. There's no reason to do a line wire
oh yeah.
version of it.
As soon as you import it, convert it to the right type.
You should, except that
that's an
it doesn't
allocation.
happen. And that's what I'm seeing in this Ethereum implementation, and that's what I hear Aaron saying he's looking at too.
Well, the other issue is with JSON, quite often you've got JavaScript somewhere in the loop on the front end. And even if you can deal with the values correctly, JavaScript won't.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
if
that
I have the
AI,
moment where it's
messes
like,
your face up.
I'm parsing a piece of JSON and I know the exact struct that I want to put down. So I would like to do one allocation of the struct.
Yeah.
And I would like to read the buffer that has the JSON string in it.
Yeah.
And I want to get all the data out of the JSON string and into the struct without doing any allocations.
Yeah.
That is a non-trivial problem.
Yeah. The H2O version of that was I'm passing this Java object over the wire and I want to just slap it down with one allocation. And I wrote a custom class that would tear apart and rebuild the Java objects out of a network buffer directly. But I generated code for it, is what it amounts to. And that's what I would do for your JSON. If you knew something about the structure, what you expected the JSON to be, I would get you a custom class that would verify the structure and then just slap it in.
That was my question.
Afterwards.
Is the way that you solve that to allocate a thread local and say, I am going to keep reusing this one thread local working space that just has all the working space I need to get from one of these strings to one of these structs?
I mean, that's not how I did it. But
like, how do you get the allocations to go away in the case of I'm trying to parse this string, but I don't want to make a whole bunch of intermediate values that only exist for the lifetime of the function?
Like I said, I generated code, and he would read the characters and build up in Java local variables the values that were correct. So the output is an allocated object. So I did a clone, literally Java clone, which is a system array copy. It's a mem copy of a golden version. So I have a heavier object and the whole tree of objects under it, and I cloned them. So now I have the space allocated. Now I go back to the incoming network wire and I read bytes off the wire and I drew the math and stuff out that backside. And that's done with generated code that's based on the structure, in my case, of the Java structure that I did reflection on and asked, what kind of fields do you have? Let me repack them. Let me see what kind of compression makes sense here. Let me assume things like most arrays are actually short, or they're mostly pre-leading zeros or post-leading zero, trailing zeros, or whatever. Make a bunch of fun assumptions that made sense in the H2O's math context to compress. And then I spat that out as literally Java code. I passed it through Java C internal into the JIT, and inside the JVM. They never hit the disk for that. I loaded that class for name, and now when somebody says, "Here comes a foo object," I looked up foo in my internal table. I pulled up this Java class. It has a static function that says, "Parse this network buffer and produce an object out."
But are you only getting away with that because you're talking to yourself? I feel
Yes,
like with the
but
JSON
no.
thing, there's going to be extra fields in there, or
Right.
people are going to alphabetize the dictionary differently.
Right. It's yes, but no. So because I knew it was everyone had the same protocol, I could get a lot more aggressive about things and skip
Right.
safety checks left and right. If I wanted to do the same thing on just
Safely.
a random junk JSON that's coming in, but I knew it had certain properties about it that would allow me to pre-allocate, I could, and it'd just be I'd add some safety checks in that said, I found fields that weren't in the intended output. I'm going to record somewhere that they were there and throw them away. Right. So I have a version X of a JSON object. It has the fields I want. It has some extra fields. Somewhere when you define your deserializer, tell me what to do with extra fields. Keep them,
Yeah.
throw them away, warn, ignore, whatever. Okay, I'll generate that code, and then it happens. So this strategy of generating the code would work.
But I've always been amazed by quite how malformed the stuff that comes at you from the internet is.
Yeah. Well.
People regularly call our APIs, and it's like they'll have the message type field in the JSON object twice with different message types.
Excellent. So the same field name in the output.
And it's just like,
Okay.
what JSON library were you even using that enabled you to put in twice the same field name?
Obviously, you just
Are you adding strings? Like, how did...
spat it out. JSON library. Why do I have those?
I was amazed by the ways in which things are malformed JSON, and it's like,
Yeah, okay. I mean, we parse CSV files, which were malformed all routinely anyhow as well. And the same kind of questions and answers. What do
so
you
the
do when you have
CSV is
extras?
trickier because your goal with parsing the bad CSV files was to get the data.
Yeah. Best effort, get the data out.
If
Absolutely.
you are a social network API, you want to be a lot more strict
So
because
what
you
did
want
you
the
do
developer
there?
to fix their problem before they ship.
Yeah, what do you
And they're
do
only going
when
to
the
fix it if there's errors.
guy sends you the same field twice in a JSON thing? What did you do with it?
We send them a 400
Okay.
bad.
So you said malformed JSON, try again.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was just fine. I mean, I could have done that as well, except that because I was going internally to myself, I fixed my bugs and
And we have
didn't
these
have the
fights
problem.
endlessly of like, if you see
Yeah.
a repeated field, should you take the first one and ignore the rest, or take the last one and ignore the rest, or just fail the request? And
Or fail a request. Yeah, right.
it is
I'm
annoying
saying
that the JSON spec did not specify a bunch of what
no.
to do in the case of bad behavior.
Right. Well, I mean, same for they've got unclosed quotes and they've got wrong syntax characters and shit. What do you do with that? Same thing I did in my CSV, I'm sure, which is at some point you did some minor error recovery, best effort to get what you get, but you reported that I found the following crappy shit so that you could, deal with it. I think CSVs are a little easier to do recovery on, and you might lose some set of lines, but like the trading log files that came from the exchanges, people had bugs when they wrote the logs. So people dumped raw binary data into a CSV file. And when you randomly surfing through the raw data found an end of line character, you decided you were at the end of a line and you're in the middle of some random crap that's just been, it's clearly from inspection, it was just a puke of binary data from something. And,
But
a
CSV
little
is
bit
also
of,
pretty old.
oh, it's very old. Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't make a lot of the assumptions about Unicode or 7-bit safeness that newer things tend to make.
No, it doesn't.
In theory, you can put arbitrary binary data into a CSV.
No, you close though. So the deal there is you have to have an end of field marker, and that character can't be in the binary data because that marks the end. There is a 1 byte special character, and it does vary, and you have to handle it. And people frequently actually don't know if they've got this data from some other tool, some other time, like Word docs would have CSV-like things in them. If they were Word, Microsoft Excel spreadsheets would have one kind of field ending and line ending, and Oracle database dumps would have another, and most people's handwritten editor hand code that would match the CSV spec would have another. So there's a minimum of 3 that were obvious and really common, but there were plenty of other mistakes running around that people did. I had a long talk actually where I talked about the kinds of things that you found in CSV files and what you had to deal with.
Do you remember
That
the
talk's still lying around.
most famous fight that Microsoft had with the standards bodies about CSV?
Oh, it could have been. Absolutely.
So if there is a comma in a field,
Yes. In a field.
then you must put that field in quotes.
Yes.
Because once you hit a quote, you ignore commas until you
Yeah.
get to the next quote.
Take the next quote. Yes.
If you have a quote in a quoted string, you put
Yes.
2 quotes in a row there to symbolize one quote.
Yes. Okay. And if you
So
have
here's the question.
uh-huh.
If you have a field that starts with a quote and
Uh-huh.
ends with a quote,
Uh-huh.
but doesn't have a comma in the middle.
Uh-huh.
So it didn't start and end with a quote because they were escaping a comma.
It just started and ended with a quote.
Should you have the start and end quotes?
And that was I can totally believe people getting screaming mad over it.
And the spec said you only escape when you have
Yeah.
a reason to escape, which means
Yeah.
you need to have a comma.
Right.
Microsoft said, no, if the first character is a quote,
Uh-huh.
you should go until the end quote.
Yeah.
Because if I don't know if there's a comma, I
Right.
don't want to be able to go arbitrarily far into the future to then realize, oh, there was a comma. I now need to go back and put a quote at the beginning.
Yes.
Now I have this arbitrary buffering requirement.
And the other one, of course, is that if you have a quote at the beginning and quote at the end, but the contents of the field is empty, now you have 2 adjacent quotes. So you just quoted a quote. Is it yet another?
See, that
case
one's not as
rules.
ambiguous to me. To me, a field that just says quote, quote should be the empty string.
Okay. All right. Fine. Well, you had to make a decision though.
But basically, I agree with the
pattern.
Microsoft format is if it doesn't have a comma in it, like, no, you hit a quote. You need to change modes when you hit a quote as the first character of a field.
We just went the other route of pragmatic and said, what are we going to do to eat the data and survive most cases? And I don't care what the spec says because we got shit from all over the place. And almost all of it was not up to anybody's spec. Literally, the vast majority was not at anybody's spec.
But yeah, I still remember Microsoft was.
Yeah, no, I can see people get angsty about it. The same as getting angsty about the JSON spec or getting angsty about XML. Fine.
Oh, I think XML is actually way better specified than CSV ever was.
Oh yeah. And CSV spec came well after the horse got out of the barn. People were doing it for a long time as it was a convenient way in your text editor to delineate 2D table data.
So I'm curious, does anyone here have opinions of XML literals and those classes of things inside programming languages?
Yeah, you should be shot. The same as regexes. Yeah. If you have a problem and you're trying to solve with regexes, now you have 2 problems. If you have XML, now you have a problem trying to solve with XML, now you have 2 problems.
Because I remember the Scala community was super excited about XML literals in Scala and eventually decided that was a bad idea. And now the React community is all about their TSX files that is an XML file that's got TypeScript mixed intermixed with the XML.
Yeah, fine. I'm still that opinion that I would only ever touch an XML if exactly I'm trying to do a connection to an antique system that had XML, and then I would get out of XML as fast as I could, but fine. I need to step out for a minute. If people want to carry on, I'll be back in 5 or 7 or something. I'm expecting the heater dude any second now. We've not had heat for a month and a half. It's middle of the winter on top of a mountain. Not had heat in a month and a half. So heater dude is arriving at some point, and I need to go deal.
Heat is important, so
I will be back shortly.
Clearly, he needs to get into AI or Bitcoin mining to heat up his house.
Yeah, a few rigs to warm up the place in no time.
Oh, Cameron, I had a question. We were talking about the Erlang VM last time.
Yep.
And I was wondering what Ecstasy's attitude is toward applications where it's being spread across the network. Do you expect Ecstasy to essentially have one VM per host? And it's the job of
Yes.
your application to figure out which box which piece runs on, or can I give it a complex application that just forks a whole bunch of worlds and it can decide this one can go to another box because there's not a lot of communication with it, but these two really better be on the same box because there's a lot of communication between them.
So our planned deployment model for our cloud infrastructure is one, possibly two Ecstasy instances per machine, physical machine. And it depends on the size of the machine, but basically we're planning to stick one big runtime on each machine. And when you deploy, though, you're not deploying to a machine; you're just deploying.
So
You
it's
say,
more like one thread per core than one process per core.
yes. So per hardware thread, we will have one OS thread for executing Ecstasy. We may have additional threads that are for
Blocked on
other
IO
stuff.
and whatever.
IO, exactly. So we do all IO on pretty much all IO on separate threads. But the goal is that actual executing code has its own hardware thread to run on. And it's all continuation based, if you will. The entire runtime is continuation based. So what that allows us to do is to basically correlate wall clock time to actual usage, because there's a one-to-one between executing code and the hardware it's running on.
Do you trust the wall clock enough for that?
Sure.
I feel like you end up paying a lot of money for waiting for IO.
Oh, but we don't wait for IO. The moment you hit IO, well, go back to Cliff's discussion on spin online, but basically the moment you hit IO, someone else is doing something. So you never block. We don't have the ability to block. We have no wait. We have no synchronized.
Okay,
There's
so if
no
I say
such
something like, oh, wait, that just means become a continuation at this point in the function.
bingo. Yeah, it's a different runtime model. I'm not absolutely convinced that it's perfect, but we don't hate it
It
yet.
doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be at a different part of the design space than the things it's competing with.
Right. I mean, the entire notion, going back to where we started from, is we want the ability to put 10,000 apps on a single server, period. Like, so if I have 1,000 servers, I want to be running 10 million apps. And, I think yeah, it's an economic thing. Like, we think we can dramatically reduce the hardware footprint and the electrical cost of running an app.
But I imagine your runtime knows a lot more. So the model I've always imagined for Ecstasy was like, I start Ecstasy on 10,000 servers and try to run 10 million apps.
Yeah, I mean,
And not having something like Kubernetes under it trying to auto scale up and down
right,
the thing itself.
right. So we don't have any VMs in the VMware sense, in the Zen sense, right?
Right.
We don't have any containers in the Linux container sense. I mean, those are great technologies, as is Kubernetes.
But they're
Kubernetes
performance
is
expensive.
not bad. Actually, they're not bad, especially now with the hardware support. The problem is that they're rigid, right? So if I have a VM and I'm running something in it that may need 8 gigs, I have to give it 8 gigs. And that 8 gigs is off limits for everything else on the machine. So it's concrete. Like it's like I'm taking this port. It's as rigid as a physical machine. So all we've done is put physical machines inside a physical machine and called them VMs. So the
We
thing
have a
is,
strategy for that. It's called lie and crash. If your lie is exposed.
That also happens.
Azul made the same observation, and we went after a different solution than where Cameron's going with it, but there's the same problem was being attacked. Yeah. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead,
mean,
Cameron.
no, Azul, I knowing most of the people behind it, like incredible concept. Like how do I at the time there were no dual core CPUs.
Yeah.
So Azul was basically designing 1,000 core machine when Intel was working on building the first dual core CPU.
Yeah.
And just a completely different sense of scale. I mean, I was a huge fan, obviously.
It should have been an individual Zilbox should have been treated as a cloud service of some kind. And that's what we actually ended up trying to do, but we had to all write all that software at the same time. But to your point about if you ask for an 8 gig thing, the Azul model was you asked for, but you're not currently using. So we will loan that out to the general pool, but we'll make the hard rule that says if you really want that 8 gigs, you can get it.
Right.
And then a different app who said, I want 8, but I've used mine up, and we would have to throw an out of memory at you, will instead go back to the general pool and say, well, we can get 4 from this other guy, and now you'll have 12. But if he wants his 4 back, we'll give it back to him by forcing you to take a hard GC cycle, and you'll out of memory, and he'll give it up, and we'll hand it back to him.
Yeah. So the other thing that we did with the continuation passing style, so don't overlook this. This is a pretty big deal. Every architecture since the dawn of time has been you call my main, and the first thing I do, and Cliff will attest to this because he used to write assembly too. The first thing you do in the header of your assembly on, say, x86, for example, the first 4 bytes, I think, are basically you say how much memory you need. And the number you ask for in human terms is 99999999999999999 bytes. You say, I literally require every possible byte in the universe. And that's the first thing in the COM header. Am I remembering this right, Matt? Cliff?
In the com headers?
In the bin, in the .bin or .com, it's the same structure.
Right. Yeah.
Different extension.
Yeah, probably.
You say how much memory you need, and since you're the only thing running on the computer,
yeah, you ask for it all.
You take everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that's basically how we built everything since the dawn of time. Then it comes into your main, and you do not return from your main until you are 100% done with everything. And in the meantime, this is why everything was single threaded and non-reentrant, right? In the meantime, nothing else happens unless you let it happen. Well, there was IRQs, but other than that, nothing else happens. Right?
Orland's sidekick,
right.
side note,
whatever that was. Yeah.
Multi-threading, quote unquote.
So what we did with the continuation concept with the fiber, we call them fibers, but whatever, it's all nomenclature, is we said, look, you can't wait for something, right? You don't get in a loop and say, okay, while, like, go back to the Windows 3.1 model, right? While peak message, translate message, dispatch message, right? So you had this 3-line while loop, 4 if you count the closing curly, right? And that was in every single Windows program. That was in the win main of every single Windows program. While peak message, translate message, dispatch message. And basically that was the, I'm going to sit here and wait for something. And so, or maybe it was while get message. I don't know. You'd block on the first one. And as soon as you got a message, then you dispatch it. So the problem was, though, you never returned. So you're sitting, if you think of it as a stack, you're sitting on the stack, right? So, you're kind of wedged on top of, you're not moving. So what with continuations, though, treat the main as a continuation, not as a function, right? Not as something that you go into and wait forever until you're done. It's like, so everything is a continuation, right? Including the main. And the result of that is 99% of the time, applications do nothing. And during that 99% of the time, there is no stack frame at all, period. There's nothing in memory. I'm sorry, not in memory, but there's nothing in a thread or whatever.
So you've gotten rid of the stack frames by buying a task queue.
Yeah.
Well, again, a task queue implies that there's something to do, but yes, most of the time, most applications do nothing. So if you look at Amazon, the utilization
Right, it's not a per
actually,
application task, it's a per VM task queue.
right,
At the
exactly.
very least, the VM is always waiting for incoming events that's going to trigger one of the applications to respond to something.
Yeah.
Right. So everything, yes, it's a reactive model, an event-based model, if you will, versus I'm going to sit here and wait for something. So in a way, you've transferred the concept of waiting for something up the stack.
Up the stack. Yeah.
But what it means though is that an application that's not currently running code, it's in memory, it's runnable, but it's not running. That application is in theory relocatable. Stick it on a different machine, stick it on disk.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's
But a
the
relocation is
basic
just going to
concept.
smell like a GC pause.
Yeah.
You
Well,
stop
not
that piece of the
even,
world,
because
you
if
move
the
it to a new VM, you
application's-
start it again.
Yeah, because if the application's not doing anything, it's not even a pause.
No, but the restart time on the app
Yes,
will look like it took a GC pause
Correct.
of some kind. Yeah.
correct.
The first response might not be as quick as you might like.
Right.
Although I suspect a lot of apps would have a valid first response that could be done in a small amount of code if you could figure out what that first response, the get it first hit going, and then you immediately begin paging in the rest of the app while you
So apps are super bursty, and they're actually more bursty now than they've ever been because of JavaScript front ends. So, you may see what used to be like a single web request that would be followed by 2 or 3 image requests is quite often now, hundreds, maybe thousands of tiny little JavaScript fetches hitting the back end, right? So you need to be able to handle lots of mosquito bites, so to speak, death by 1,000 cuts. So you need concurrency, you need good IO, but at the end of the day, most of these apps, most of the time, are doing nothing, and that's what we're targeting. We're targeting apps that don't do anything,
yeah.
and
But
that's
there's
the
different
90.
styles of don't do anything.
Right, of course. Well, what I mean
so for
is,
example,
like,
I have
during,
a dashboard that we use during sprint planning.
Mhm.
And it pulls all these tickets in and it does a fairly complicated join query. And we run it once a week. Like,
right.
you don't want that to be a service.
So the other thing that's kind of cool about the concept is that you can turn everything into events, right? Like, I need to do this thing once a week. Okay. Set a timer, say, wake me up in a week, I'm going to do this, right? Or wake me up every week, I'm going to do this. Now for 6 days and 23 hours, there's nothing on the CPU from your app. That is, like,
Yeah.
that's the idea is
Like to even not have memory for the runnable instance, just pickle it down to disk.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
I
IO
was a fan
becomes,
of the hierarchical timing wheels paper.
I don't know that one.
I don't know it either.
So it came out of IBM, and they realized that they were spending a lot of time going through the list of things that has this alarm fired? Has this alarm fired? Has this
Yeah.
alarm fired? Has this
Yeah.
alarm fired? Has this alarm fired? Go back to the beginning.
Right.
And they
Oh, I see.
realized that they could set a rule that said, okay, I'm going to make a new ring that says this is an event that is not going to fire for at least 30 seconds. And anything I run into whose firing time is more than 30 seconds away, I'm going to push to the next ring.
Yeah.
And every 16 seconds, I'm going to check for things that were 2 seconds away the last time.
Right. Okay.
And now all I have to check is there anything in the ring of stuff that happens? And then
Right.
the 32-second ring pushes stuff off to the 1024-second ring, which sends stuff off to the 32K second ring, which sends stuff off to the 1 megasecond ring.
Right. Interesting.
And now, if you
Generation
schedule something
scheduling.
for 3 weeks from now, it goes into the megasecond ring and only gets read once every 500,000 seconds to pull in everything in the megasecond ring that's going to fire in the next week. And
Priority
it just
queues.
drastically reduced the amount of time their CPU was spending waiting for cron events for systems that had millions or billions of cron events, many of which are like, do this once a year.
Pay my
I don't need to check
taxes
that every millisecond.
once a year. Yeah, interesting. The insides of Hotspot had a layered on the thing that had to bake down all the events down to a word you're going to check as a safe point pull of read a L1 hittable low memory word it didn't require any registers to go get. And if it had anything non-zero, you went and figured out what's going on. But that meant that you only had so many bits, and if you had more events than bits, you lumped them together. So you started triaging which bits got what.
Yeah, one of these events fired.
One of
Go
these
figure out
events
which
fired,
one.
so I will look at the list of possible choices on that guy. Yeah,
Turn a list into a tree. Turn a
list of
linear into a log.
whatever. Bit vector, pile of bit, 32 bits became a tree, something like that. Yeah. Okay, fine. It's not quite your rings thing.
But there's a lot of these little tricks that just make a remarkable difference. I remember one story that came out of Sun when they were doing their first shared desktop environment thing.
Sunray.
And they noticed they were hitting performance problems that were really saturating the CPU. And they start going to look like, what is the virtual desktop that's using it? And it turned out the thing that was using the most CPU was stock ticker checker.
Hmm.
And it was because someone who wasn't paying attention had set this thing to check the stock price and then set timeout 0.
Oh, timeout 0.
So as soon as it finished checking with the stock price, it decided to check the stock price again.
I certainly remember those machines coming around, and you could get the stock ticker app, and everyone was, of course, excited about their Sun stock. But that was like first time I'd seen a common, usable by every consumer grade stock market checker. You didn't have special money. You didn't have to pay to be inside the trading firms or anything. And it was just on your desktop, like a junky whatever. And then up in the corner, here's your stock prices rolling by. And it was like very
You just
cool.
leave it there always.
And you
Yeah.
leave, yes, you leave it there always.
But it was a big improvement to set it to only check the stock price, once every second.
Once every second. Yeah, that's probably good enough. Yeah.
If I'm going to lose my life savings, that's fine if I find out about it a second from now.
Yes, it's already done by then, anyhow. uh,
Well, and back then the free feeds were probably delayed by 5 or 7 seconds or something like that anyway.
no, it's like 5 minutes unless you pay money. There is a rule, law, something, whatever. You're disallowed from ever publishing the public stock market on any of the major exchanges without an X minute delay. I think it's like 5 minutes, unless you have paid money, which they get a cut of. That says
I
I
don't
get
think
a
that's a
real
law. I
fee.
think that's just a term of service.
Yeah, right. You have to pay for the service. Let's say that you have to get the real-time feed service costs money, and the non-real-time feed service is forcibly delayed by not seconds, by minutes. Went down this path.
Isn't that part of the thesis document of Hashgraph?
Which one? The
That
minimum
you're
delay?
not delayed in finding out what's been happening on the transactions?
No, I mean, all the Bitcoin things are as fast as possible and all as real-timey as possible. And of course, the delay between when you put a request onto the transaction bus and when it gets settled because some miner has his whatever mining section has hit the head of the queue and is voted by the majority of folks. That's commonly many minutes, 10 minutes. So in theory, the trade happened instantly, but it's not known provably taken for like many minutes.
It takes 10 minutes to have happened to 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, because that's how long it takes. Okay, and now the heater guy really is here. I'm getting there.
But yeah, the thing that's been making me think about Ecstasy lately is watching all these LLM tools that are vastly more productive if you give them access to a Turing-complete language,
Right.
but also you want to be sandboxed by default.
Yep.
So how do you simultaneously say, I would like to, by default, give you access to the full power of a Turing-complete language, and also give you a strict quota of how much gas you can spend on any one program,
Right.
and
Yeah,
also
we've been
not
trying to
let
come
it
up with a
erase the
better
hard
word than
drive?
we've been trying to come up with a better word than gas as well, because it kind of has this built-in fossil fuel connotation. It's like, what do we call it besides gas? Like battery, juice.
I mean, I kind of like quota.
I want to see what's going on. I'll
Yeah,
check
quota is pretty
chat.
loaded too, though, in the political sense.
Okay. The heater is under warranty, except for the labor. So he has the magical part from the dealer that took 2 weeks to get, and he's going after it.
Maybe you should invoke the steampunk feature by saying this is how much steam you have.
Yeah. In theory, we're not having any steam coming out of the heater, but we had carbon monoxide coming out, which was like
That's
a
not better.
hard no-go. Yeah.
But it's still something.
Well, put heat out. Just put the exhaust out too. It's just not the right answer.
So we were talking about better terms than gas for kind of
Exactly.
container.
Finite compute allocation.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
gas. That was the problem. Was I was gas getting in the house.
Apply it to code. What's a
By throwing down
better
the
fuel
gas
term?
count. No, yeah.
We do have those moments where it's like you want something to feel interactive. So you would really like to get something back in front of the user in
Yeah.
150 milliseconds.
Yeah. I've long thought about this, and
So
something that says it's provable, so that you can't write the code, or it's provable in that whatever's going to run, but something must come back, and if nothing, then the answer is this app seems to have been ignoring you. But the OS or somebody, certainly on a GUI, says something like the app is we told it to go do, and it
yeah,
hasn't said
non-responsive.
anything, so bad on the app.
Because someone when you're doing these LLM thing, it's got to put together its list of tool calls, and then it has to do all the tool calls, and it has to get the responses back that it's going to get back, and get the timeouts back for things that didn't come back in time, and then it has to write the response and send it to you.
I'm okay
That's a lot to
with
do in 150 milliseconds.
I'm okay with the guy being slow about it, but I want to be updated in a human timeable fashion. So if it's not going to refresh the GUI, I'm going to blank all the buttons, except I'm going to, unlike Microsoft Windows, I'm going to make sure that the kill it close button cannot be removed. Otherwise, I have to Control Alt Delete, bring up Task Manager. So you still get removed, but it's just more annoying. So why bother? So you can't remove the close and go away button. But so the guy thing runs, and I want him to come back and tell me, here's how long it is until I get done with the current answer, and I want some recursively tree depth thing that has, time estimates with more greater, lesser precision with subparts that come around as they come around, and you can tell how much longer till something exciting happens. And that lets you as a human judge, time to go get coffee, or I'm just going to sit here and wait till it pops up. And I think that's missing from many GUI actions where the first thing that happens is I hit a button and then I have no idea how long until something happens. And I'm
A
hoping
lot,
it's quick, but maybe it's not.
yeah, a lot of the if you're using the AI stuff though, like even sometimes just the AI processing can take like several seconds, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because like if
Minutes.
you have a big enough, well, I don't know about minutes.
I've just recently I have seen minutes. It's certainly possible.
Well, I guess it depends if it's like recursively calling more AI tools to
Well,
like
just got a
internets,
big
but
code base to plow through, but whatever. So
Yeah.
there's a time. The time is long enough to be interesting on a human scale. What the hell do you do about it? So now finish your thought. So accept that minutes happen, even modern recently, in the last week.
yeah, I'm just saying I don't, it seems like you've got to give it some level of time, and you could probably like use
My time is
estimation based
always
on
more important than the AI's time.
Yeah, you can always
Oh,
like estimate how long it'll take based on
yes.
like
Yeah.
how big the inputs are.
Right. Windows file copy comes up and says, I'll be done in 30 seconds. Oh, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 seconds, back and forth, around and around
Okay,
it goes.
there's a very good reason for that though. It's very hard if you don't know how many files, like you have to
Yeah.
go look at the
Yeah.
files to find out how many files there are to
I,
copy, and then like
I, I'm okay with an
But you can
estimate.
still respond.
Yes,
The
you can
copy
still
file log
respond.
does appear before the copy completes.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I want all my apps to be required, the OS on your behalf, if you can't do it yourself, to put up an estimate of what we think is going on here, including this app's just gone silent, chewing its curd. Okay, it has. But now I know that OS didn't freeze. I didn't just crash the hardware. There's something else going on, whatever. Okay. Now make it easy for the app programmer to come through and say, on a first cut, I'm going to claim that since I'm looking at a million line code base, I'm probably a couple minutes out. So I'm going to say a couple minutes with plus or minus a couple minutes. And that's what shows up in the timer bar about how long. And then the guy comes through and says, answer partway along. And he says, oh, I've done half my work in 1/4 of the time, so I can update my estimate. Fine. These are all easy things that should be added in every OS windowing system / app interaction so that you honor the human's time. So let them make the best call they can on how to spend their time.
yeah, I mean that's mostly
Also,
like a
it should be able to decide when to delegate. So if I open my AI chatbot and I say, good morning, that should not cause a network call.
Yeah.
The half gigabyte size model running locally on the phone can say back, good morning, how can I help you today?
Yes.
That does not require 3 minutes of thinking on a 200 gigabyte model.
Yeah. Yes.
If I ask it a very complicated or very niche expertise type of question,
Yeah.
the local model should say, oh, I don't have a good answer for this. I'm going to go ask
Right.
the network.
Yeah. And then it
The
can
example I
inform you
like
of
to
that.
give is if I right now have the Wi-Fi off and 4G off on my phone, and I say, okay, Google, turn on the 4G. It says, I can't do that right now because your internet is not on.
Because your 4G's not on.
Why don't you turn on your network so that I can connect to the network so that I can send the audio across the network so I can find out what it is you asked me to do right now? That
I
is a
mean,
task that can absolutely be handled locally.
yes.
There should be a hierarchy here of there's a tiny local model that tries to
Yeah.
guess if it can answer your question, and if it
Right.
can, just does, and if it
Right.
can't, goes and seeks greater resources.
Set a timer on my phone, set a reminder, send an email, send
Right.
a text.
These are all things that can be
Yeah.
handled by a half
Right.
gig model that fits on your
Yeah.
phone.
We drive in these mountains and you go around corners and you have no Wi-Fi and you have no 4G. And a little while later you will. Okay, but there's nothing right now. But I don't want the thing to come up and say, go turn on your Wi-Fi. I don't want to go silent and say nothing because he can't reach any network. It's like he gone away on me. So the Apple
Right.
Siri does a little better. They will
It should
pop
say,
up
I'm
right
happy
away.
to keep talking to you. You should know that 98% of my brain is not accessible right now,
Yeah,
but I'm willing
right.
to talk to you on 2% of my brain.
Right. Something should come around there and says something. Yeah, yeah. And then we get, closer to home and we get cell phone coverage and whatever. You walk in the house and the Wi-Fi works and you have cable and you have the high bandwidth and all that.
But
Yeah.
it just amazes me how much of the just like basic product designy things are missing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm well annoyed at Gradle for having wild variations in execution time to build the same thing over and over again. Wild variations and routinely getting himself crapped out. I have to kill and restart the Gradle daemon, and it comes up and he says, the next time I'll be faster. And the real answer, of course, is the next time I'll be dead because I'm confused and I had to get killed and restarted. And
I mean
I wish he would not
it
say, next time I'll be faster.
in fairness to Gradle, right? I think that the problem of okay, I want to cache build results, but I don't want to like use your entire disk with infinitely like expanding cache is a difficult problem. Like that's
No,
an
no. This is the stupid thing. In all of these cases I'm looking at, a make file equivalent is 100x faster, like ludicrously faster, and also just completely simpler model in how you use it.
I don't think that's the case. I think that it's
I
more
I
like
personal
Java
experience
is
directly done
building.
by me. Okay.
Yes, but you're like, I'm assuming like you've already got the you know
Dependencies fetched.
yeah.
Those got fetched a long time ago for both of us. I'm not counting any dependency fetching. If I say if I start the project and I'm using the make version, there's a first step which is I'm downloading shit. Okay. And we do it for Gradle, there's a first step says I'm downloading shit. Okay. Fine. No, I'm talking I edit a file and I build. Build times vary from 1 minute to 30 with me editing the same one file. And all it does, it's a Java file, and I could just change characters in the comments. And it will be huge variation. 80% will be the 1 minute, and 20% will be 4 or 5, and one time in 20 or 50, it'll take 30 minutes, and I have no idea why. And he's very opaque about why. He'll just say, I have to rebuild the universe. And I'm like, why? Or he'll say, I've timed out on my current
Right.
compile plan, and so I'm going to throw it away and rebuild the compile plan and rebuild the universe too. Why? I have no fucking clue.
But also,
So
your make file is not checking 100 dependencies for updates and then recursively checking their each 100 dependencies for updates
the
because you
make
don't have
file,
10,000 dependencies.
the make file does the obvious thing of if something else had a dependency change, I could tell from a top level file timestamp change, and I would work my way down from there, down into the details. If you change the directory structure above, then I went down below. Like I don't need to go to Maven to check dependencies, and I should not, and I don't think the Gradle is.
Well, it's the difference between
If
an
you go
expert
down a
tool and an idiot tool. So Gradle's designed to be an idiot tool, and Makefile are designed to be expert tools. And the reason is because you know what your dependencies are with a Makefile, and you're like, okay, I know it doesn't cover this. So I'm going to say, make clean or whatever, and I'll do a full build because I know I need to right now because I changed something that I change twice a year. While Gradle is like, I assume every time you tell me to build something that you just changed something that you only change twice a year. I'm going to go check that.
It doesn't make any sense. The model that Make uses is file timestamps are efficiently modified by the OS and are efficiently queried by anybody who asks those questions. And you can ask for 100,000 file timestamp queries in a fraction of a second.
Yeah,
but
Like a
that
huge
assumes
count of
your
them.
dependencies are on the local system.
They are for Gradle as well. They're immediately cached.
so
And I'm
file
not
stamps
counting that
though,
time.
file
I assume
stamps,
my first run is you're going to cache everything from the Maven. Same
file
for my
stamps though
makes.
don't file stamps don't show you deletions. That's the other problem.
I'm saying, okay, you're hard to hear, Cameron, because it's
I
like
said
you're
I said
buffed.
He said
files.
file stamps make it hard to see if a file got deleted.
No, it didn't.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
no,
has
if
no
I
file
know the
stamp,
file's supposed to be there, then that counts.
but that means you have to compare it to the list of file stamps you had before. You can't just get the file stamps and say, has anything changed since the last time I built?
I routinely do that.
Yeah.
I have an automatically generated set of timestamps from files that I had to visit at some point. That set is then queried, and if the file's missing, I know I need to rebuild. And the set of files that I'm missing is now different. That is part of what goes going on in the make. That's the makes I was
So you
doing with you
treat
guys on
missing as
your
if it's
Ecstasy.
infinitely in the future, or
I'm sorry.
treat missing as if it's right now.
Yeah, if it's missing, it's as if it had been modified, whatever, prior to
I'm just
anything.
saying a lot of implementations in the past wouldn't pick up a missing file because what they were looking for was any timestamp newer than the last cached
So I'm
code.
using make with the dependencies, make depends, which after I do the original build, I gather the dependencies and stuff them in the disk. And the
So
next go round, the dependencies are also checked along with all the existing stamps that I know about. And if those don't align, then the make just rebuild. So I didn't
so what
do anything, I just
what
said make. And
Gradle
that's
does,
instantly quick.
what Gradle does, if I understand correctly, which I probably don't because Gradle has proven me to be an idiot repeatedly, what Gradle does is it creates a second location where it puts a copy of everything.
Yes.
Now it does it efficiently. It uses every
Oh.
OS hook in the world to do it efficiently, but it does create a copy of everything, and that gives it the ability to do the, did anything change? But it then requires it to do the did anything change?
I don't understand what it's doing, but it certainly is vastly slower and irregular over me. Now, having said that, as of yesterday, I did diagnose the following effect, which was I edited the Gradle build tool piece to try and add cross remote debugging flags on tests. And then IntelliJ secretly detected that the Gradle build file had changed and began loading the Gradle build, the entire Gradle build setup and building. And when I was running in my other window, he would say, I can't do shit because I can't get the file hasher to light up. So I'm dying for no file hasher. I have no idea what this file hasher is or where it come from, why or anything. And IntelliJ doesn't tell you, it's just secretly behind the back. It's churning all the Gradle files in the universe. Then when you delete the dead Gradle daemon and try to get it to go again, at some point he and IntelliJ corrupt the cache, I believe, and I had to actually Gradle. I did, and then Gradle clean is amazingly slow. Like it was 8 minutes to do a Gradle clean, where it's fraction of a second to do an arm star followed by download over the internet. Much faster than a Gradle clean, but eventually got it clean and go. So it's somewhere in one of my working strategies where I have an IntelliJ running and I have a window where I'm launching tests that are in a container, and I'm attaching the debugger in the container. As soon as I touch anything with Gradle on one or the other, the one or the other lights up and grabs some portion of the Gradle cache. And if they're both lit up, which is a common thing, I would just over here and say, well, while that's lighting, getting ready to go, I'll just switch over to IntelliJ and do something. They together light up and then they corrupt the cache. And that may be some of the issues I've been fighting with here. Not able to use Gradle in IntelliJ and Gradle on a container at the same time. And I don't, maybe that's part of the issues. But it's been bad. I have to say, of my month and a half of getting performance out, more than a third and maybe less than a half of my time has been fighting Gradle. It's a huge amount of my time has been fighting Gradle. Slow, buggy, crashing, corrupted constantly, all the time.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time with Gradle, and I do not believe it's possible to master it. And you and I have spent time with Gradle in the past as well.
Yeah.
So it's
like I said, I walked away from the Ecstasy Gradle and it did a make file and was very pleased with how fast and reliable and stable it was.
I consider Gradle to be an AI only tool because I have been able to fix a few things after a day or two spent in an AI conversation trying to figure out, WTF.
Right. It's just right. I mean, how do you want to spend your life? Where do you spend your time? For me, Gradle is a net negative by a large number.
So if you zoom out a little bit from just the build system to the entire CI, CD, a change happened in GitHub. I want something to notice this pull request and run a bunch of tests before I merge to main.
I'm a fan of CI.
What is your preferred structure for how to set something like that up?
Oh, well, these days
I mean, are you just going to have a make file that says make test and have your GitHub hook just download the repo, call make test?
The last time I did anything here, somebody else set up something on simple that was, I don't know if Gradle was involved, but there was some guy, I don't even know I can't remember the name of the thing, Yakli or something was going on. There was a thing that you got sort of easy to set up that would run the CI on a push, which, as far as I'm concerned, was just a fine way to go. The deal, the one of the many problems I have with Gradle is extracting a test out of it was like a nightmare. So that if I have a failing test, I need to get it in the debugger. I need to extract the test out of it. And I could launch under Gradle to get the test to go, but I couldn't get the test out of Gradle. And that meant I couldn't go change the test arguments freely and conveniently to go modify shit like, hey, I'm doing remote debugging, and here's the remote debugging command line, which is not a thing that Gradle had clues about. And furthermore, the default port for the remote debugging was taken up by something else, so I had to have non-default parameters here. But if I'm also debugging, maybe I want to throw some JVM line arguments on it. Maybe I want to trim out shit out of command line to make sure it isn't this other problem, whatever. I want to go hack the thing, and I can't get an M test out of Gradle. Okay, I don't care if Gradle's running in the CI in the sense that he reports a failure if I can extract the test out of the CI and go do something. That being said, what do you say my favorite one is whoever did the last thing is fine. I don't care. But I think CI is good. I have been doing CI pre the Gradle world and pre the GitHub world for a long time. My normal response from 20 years ago would be I have a make that runs all the tests that you're supposed to do before you push to your non-Git source code management of the day, whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, the old school version of CI that I'd seen was we have a box on the network that's named CI box that does a git fetch
Uh-huh.
at midnight every day and then executes the command make test.
Yep. Well, you're going to get me into war stories in a minute.
Oh.
Pre all these things, we had access to cheap Windows boxes, but they were running the DOS, and a crash would hard hang the machine. So you got a widget, which was a power on off, and you gave it a timer. So you hooked it up to the serial port, you talked to it. So when you would run a test, you'd say, this test should be done in X seconds. And then I'll get back to you. And if you didn't get back, the timeout happened and the power guy power cycled your PC. Literally, this was a known strategy for doing CI things. So then you get these tests set up and you run them overnight. And you'd walk away and you come back in the morning and the logs would say the following
This is
tests
the
run
classic
until the
tell a
timeout.
friend where you're going.
I'm sorry?
It's the classic tell a friend where you're going.
Yeah.
I'm going into a test suite. If I'm not back in 15 minutes, send help.
Send help. Yeah. Well, the help was reboot the machine. How did you reboot a machine then? Oh, it wasn't a virtual container that I killed the container and restarted. No, you killed the actual machine. You power cycled literally.
So this was just a power plug with a serial port.
Yeah. Yes. And they were commonly available. It was a well-known strategy for testing in that era. Absolutely.
Speaking of tests, I actually added, that little build tool I mentioned last time?
Mm-hmm.
I have added a testing function to it where it can run tests. So for all the CMake projects in the workspace, if there are C tests anyway.
Yeah. The whole testing thing, it's very useful. I'm actually a very strong believer in test-driven development. I will routinely write the test first and then go code to make the test run.
Do you mind if I share real quick?
Keep it tight. I'm going to go because
quick.
I want to go check my dude here. I'm going to end early.
It will be
hang
like
on,
2 minutes.
Okay, try it now.
My basic attitude on test-driven development is that it is incredibly valuable, but people are too hesitant to delete tests.
Oh, yeah, me 40, 30 years ago, but yes. And then now tests. Yes.
All right, can you see?
Because when you're writing something, you want to write a lot of tests to make sure that it's basically working, even testing a lot of the ways you've chosen arbitrarily to implement it.
Yeah.
Can you see?
And
Yes.
once that works and you have a working end-to-end test that gives you confidence in the end-to-end behavior, I think it's worth deleting a bunch of the little implementation-y tests.
Oh,
Because
I
the
see.
end-to-end test is actually the only one that's telling you anything useful.
Yeah. I cycle through those too. I don't know how to do it exactly that way, but it's close enough.
So here's a little testing
Yeah.
thing. So I type my cbuild test. It builds all the projects and then it runs the tests for all the configs you set. So like I could do debug, async.
I have my strategy, or not my strategy. I have my formal beliefs on
Very
build
chatty.
tooling, and one of them is less noise. Unless you ask for more noise, you get less noise out because you want the things that had issues to shine out of the middle of the spewage.
Yep. So I made it like put the logs in the console, but then at the end it kind of puts the summary. So that was my take on it, but I don't know. Maybe I should do it differently.
So one of the things going on with Gradle is he'll say task up to date, and there are hundreds and hundreds of tasks, high hundreds of tasks. And so a non-up to date or a failing thing just scrolls off your screen. And you every time have to take the output of the Gradle and throw it through something else to go find what actually went wrong. It's ludicrous, in my opinion. Fine. I do this with Make. Make's all about files and what files are out of date with what others. So if a out of date situation happens, then I get a line saying I'm doing something about this being out of date with that, but only one line per. That's my desired goal. If you fail, I don't care if you spew a ton of things and then die immediately. Hey, I tried to go compile, I had compile errors. Here they are, boom. But if you pass, you get one line. I compiled XYZ.
Yeah.
That's my strategy.
So here's the output.
Yeah, I see your summary. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a Gradle-like summary, which, like I said, they're the above things that roll by obfuscate where the fails happen because I want to see the fail dump. And the summary at the bottom is kind of okay. That's actually pretty nice looking, honestly. The
So
ones out of Gradle aren't nicely formatted, and you have to look at them with the stack traces and other things that spewed out at the same time and go drag out what actually broke.
So it's got, let me try this again. Hang on. Shift, what do I do? Command minus?
You're missing your header now.
Yeah,
there you go.
There you go.
You
So
that's fine.
all right.
Oh, you threw a file list somewhere. Are those all links in your?
It's a markdown file, but this.
Yeah, but you can mouse over and click through.
No, Glow is not actually keyboard interactive.
Okay.
It's just
that'd be a fun thing. I mean, it's some terminal, but if you had click through links on the dump out, it'd be interesting.
They're technically click through, but if you're using a different markdown reader, not this one.
Okay. So Emacs will dump outputs from these kind of things into a compile buffer, it's called, whatever, compile output buffer, and then the links are hot, and you can mouse over or you can keystroke over and jump through, and that'll be like line number in the file where the error happened, but also reports and logs and things will all be hot, and you can go jump to them.
Yeah, so I can open one of these tests.
Yeah,
and
you get a fine grain dump.
Yeah, and
I would claim that I would. Well, it's fine.
Yeah, I could maybe change
in
this.
the case where you have hundreds. I think that's a great thing. If I have millions of those, I wouldn't care to have the logs come out like that, but that's fine. I'm making problems that don't exist, so never mind me.
Yeah, I could do it differently. So like each different run creates a
logs reporting.
It creates a folder.
Yeah.
So if like
not sure, right. Those will accumulate again on the big projects. They just drown in them.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I could have it like have a no save
or
something.
I would claim that you shouldn't add more until you personally need it and use your tool to make your stuff better. And the act of you using it, you'll refine what you need out of it. And what you need will vary according to how many people work on that project and how big the project gets. So maybe you've got good enough for what you need.
Yeah, that's a really easy mistake to make of I'm using best practices that work for 4,000 developer projects on my 3 developer project.
And my 3, yeah, right, exactly. Get a lot of excess overhead in your life.
I had a 1-person project, and then I needed it to become a 3-person project, so I adopted all these 4,000 person best practices.
Right. And there is a jump from 1 to 3, but there's a different jump from 3 to 3,000 or whatever. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm gonna cut you and cut off here pretty soon. Anyone else want to do something here? New topic. And I'm gonna go bail and go check on my heater dude. See if we get heat first time in weeks upon weeks upon weeks. All right. It's fun.
I'm still on my general how to do sandboxing and how I want to do capabilities for.
Keep talking to Cameron.
A lot of the LLM problems are really these put you in your own world, sandbox you, pass around capabilities that just sounds like everything Cameron's been saying about Ecstasy for a decade.
I'm a fan. I don't like the syntax of the language, but I'm a fan of the concepts of how you do sandboxing. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we designed it for as well was the ability to build code that would actually be used as part of the compilation process. So we haven't actually gotten to that yet, but the idea was, you can't really trust code to run in the compiler.
You shouldn't.
You download something off the internet and run it, you're kind of screwed, right? So with the capabilities model, though, it's like, yeah, you download it off the internet and it can't do anything, right? Because it's like there is no internet inside the sandbox, right? So everything it's trying to do. It's a captive beast, so to speak. So you know you can see what it's trying to do and trying to get access to, and by default it doesn't have it. And that gives some interesting comp time capabilities. At the time, there was no term comp time, but that was still in the that was still emerging as a concept. But the idea of being able to actually build a component that would then be able to participate in the compilation was very enticing.
I definitely want to explore how to have compile time actions that you at compile time do some work that become runtime, essentially runtime constants, pre-computations.
Right.
I know Joe Blow does a lot with his games. I've done it a lot in the past. Those fourth implementations, all interspersed compilation and execution, and earlier compiles would produce constant things. But there's no fears of a general execution where I downloaded random shit on the internet and then, yeah, Matt, multi-stage programming, yeah. So
I mean,
yes.
even just really simple versions of compile time programming, like read in this data file.
Yeah. I want to take a sprite that's coming out of a sprite editor, and you're going to re-edit the sprite, so it's a source piece. But it's a sprite, so I'm going to suck it in as a class static constant data array for my little game. Yeah.
Right. It should be an array, a static array of bytes in the static data in the binary.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. I should not have that file packed, and when I unpack, I packed a file and then I had to open the file runtime and load it. No. Just be
And that was one of
bits
the
in
things that
fucking
really got
binary.
me when I first played The Sims. The Sims shipped as a single executable,
Yeah.
and it created a folder, and it dumped all of the images that it needed into that folder by unzipping a zip file that was in the data of the binary.
Yeah. Fat jar. Yeah, okay.
And I was just like, but why are
Yeah.
you creating an entire folder full of the static assets
Because
for
you
this
didn't have a
application?
way to, at compile time, suck in the bits. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
And that's why in Ecstasy, for example, you just point to that at compiled in your code. You say, I need access to dot whatever, dot forward slash resources for, and you actually have that as a file system inside the compiled code.
Mm.
So it implements the same file system as you'd get from, Linux or Windows or
Yeah,
whatever.
having the absorb statics just be a folder.
It's just pulling all that data from your constant pool.
Because file system is just an API.
But when you do
Because file
build,
system is just an API.
the data has to be available in the source code when you do a build.
Nope. No, the data has to be available on your disk.
But it's going to be, well, it's going to be part of your source because it's going to go into the compiled guy in the end.
So for example, if I'm writing a module called test, so say test.x is my file, test.x. If I want to see the source code for test, all I have to do is say string s equals dot forward slash test.x, semicolon, and I have the string.
Oh, I see what you're saying there. No, I had a different thing. I was looking at
because what it does is it takes the parser when it hits that thing, it parses it as a file, as a path, and because it refers to a file, it can be used as a string or as a byte array, or you actually have to put a dollar sign. We use a dollar sign to indicate that it's a file that's going to be a string. We say, string s equals dollar sign dot forward slash test.x, and now you have the contents of your source code in a string inside the source code.
Right. Now, what I'm trying to get to is at the time that you compile that constant source code, this is a sprite example, so I'm not looking at Ecstasy code. I'm looking at
Yep.
a JPEG or a GIF or whatever. Somewhere nearby, I have a resources slash sprite slash cliff dot, GIF, and I want to put that line in my code. And when I compile, I want to find at compile time this cliff.gif and suck it into the generated thing that comes out.
Exactly.
Which means that part of the compile strategy is I have to tell you where this other stuff is actually source code. In my opinion, it's source code because I'm going to edit Cliff and it's going to show up in the output. So the output depends on Cliff, so it's source code.
Or source images or source 3D models.
Yes,
it's source data
for your little dancing dudes. You're running your Skyrim and the guy's got his mighty hammer swing he's doing, whatever.
Yep.
Where
that's all just source.
What are the issues tied around with finding having the compiler see there is this path that I assume you don't say C:/user/Cameron Purdy /desktop/ da 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 on your path.
No, we cannot say that.
Right. You have some relative path at compile time.
It's all relative.
Yeah. So you have perhaps a root of your project and you're relative to the root, and the path in the code that you wrote says ... whatever your root indicator is /resources/cliff.gif.
So by
Is it going to
default,
stop me at some point, or can I ... // //
so by default, the root of this file system is the module source code itself.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
Module,
cannot go
not
above
the repo.
you cannot go above your module location in the source tree.
Okay.
But there's a command line switch for the compiler where you can say, hey, my resources directory is whatever, and that's done at the that's coming from outside. Yeah.
And then the question is, then the next one is use security on the relative path, just like Aaron says, can I dot my way out of that?
No.
So if I say relative path to resources, that's essentially another root, and I can't relative out of it.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so you automatically get one root, which is your source code location.
And you can add more.
And you can add any number of other roots, and they overlay on top of each other, so that the result is you can actually have partial resources that you kind of combine. And you can
can I pass a compile time argument in and say, hey, for this module, parent module would like to pass in an additional folder.
That's what I just
heard. You can access a compile time.
Yes. Yeah,
so
that's
it would
resources.
I have resources/sprites. Well, how about sprites/resources/cliff? And I'd have animation/resources/cliff or cliff anime, and I'd have blah 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 music/resources/whatever, and somewhere in my code I can say take these relative paths, and I'm just going to start at resources/cliff.gif and resources/music blah, and you'll have folded them all together.
So yeah, so if you're down inside package X, package Y, package Z, and you say ./something, then that is within the directory /X/Y/Z within this artificial type system.
Right.
However, you can always just say / and start your path like that.
Right.
And that goes up to the root of the resources.
But if I put multiple resources on the command line, how do you go forward when you slash and go forward? I'm just curious.
It merges all those resource directories into a single file system.
Okay. And what do you do with duplicate names?
I believe it's the order that they're defined on the command line.
Yeah.
So if you have a duplicate name, it takes the first one.
Yeah, fine. Okay, cool.
It's some arbitrary choice, but it's logical.
There's your JSON answer, Aaron, for multiple keys. Just take first.
Yeah, but one of the reasons we did this is because how many times not just Java, but almost any language, do you have to find some way to ram some zip file or binary into your build? And then the first thing your program does when it starts up is it has to figure out, okay, am I running from a jar? Am I in a servlet container? Am I blah, 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 whatever. How do I get the zip file? How do I unzip it? How do I get the resource out of it? How do I read it? right? So you have like 100 lines to do what you already had sitting there prepared for you on the disk at compile time. Like,
Right.
why do we hate developers so much that we would do this to them?
Yes.
You know,
All
it's
right, now
bad
we
enough.
gotta
It's
go.
bad enough we make them use Gradle. Anyway,
But yes, I'm 100% on board with the whole fuck it, it's bits on my disk while I'm compiling. Suck
yes.
it in
Yeah.
is the obvious, convenient way. And then we'll
Bits on my
sort
disk and pass around capabilities.
that has, yeah.
Like, I have just, I really didn't understand when I first encountered closures why anyone would care.
Oh, yeah, fine.
And the older I get, the more I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, close over data, pass
Yeah.
around capabilities, trust the GC
Someday
to figure everything out.
I'll find the time to do a proper compiler that involves closures and will no longer have the cost issue associated with them. And then that'll become the default that you would do because it's the
Yeah, that
obvious.
was one of the things that really excited me about AI is that the entire security model seemed to just be closure.
Yeah,
If you
that was
close
it.
over something and you return functions to access
Yeah.
it, then the functions are exposed and the data's not because you
Well, hopefully
had a
someday I'll
closure.
have enough money again. I can go do personal research again and finish that one out. All right, I'm going to go. It's been very
All right,
fun, very informative. Good seeing everybody. And until we meet again.
Bye.
just have to